NeonicVoid Productions presents.
Oh my God, Tiff, thanks for volunteering.
What the fuck do you mean?
Hi, hello.
This is my first time on the fucking show. I
Noggin.
can't fucking do this kind of shit.
Hola, buenos dias.
This
Welcome
is
to
us.
Book Watchers. Hi, how are ya? I'm Jacob. I'm joined with not just one, but two beautiful, gorgeous, stunning co-hosts. One of these losers you already know. The other one you also know from one of the other podcasts. So who are you guys?
Hi, I'm the gay-ass gremlin that lives under your bed, Devin. Hi, how are ya? I'm that
Hello.
faint. Yes, you hear in the middle of the night.
You have that really like just fire thought, and you just hear this yes in the background.
Yeah. And today we have our guest star who's not the housekeeper today.
No, there's no house to be keeping up with today.
Wow.
Sorry.
Wow. I mean, this shit looked pretty messy up in here, so you're right.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, there needs to be a house first for it to be kept, you know?
Damn.
Wow. Just wow.
Damn.
Drag us.
Roasted.
I mean, yeah. Hi, hello. I am Tiff. Y'all usually know me as housekeeper from the other podcast, or if you listen to Voidonica, you know me as the little what is she? A gnome.
A gnome currently, Davey.
A gnome currently, and her name is Davey. So
So to get things going, if you I don't actually not having a housekeeping spiel. If you go to the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our link tree that'll lead you to a Book Watchers Twitter, if it ever exists at some point in the future, as well as links to other shows in the NeonicVoid family, whatever to your liking, as well as the YouTube channel, blah, 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 blah. Love it. Stan it. We're here for it. Also, if you didn't know, fun little fact, Scott Lang from Ant-Man and the Wasp, the book he wrote in the third one actually has a physical release date. Anyway.
Oh, no way.
I know, right? I'm all buy the book because this is like hilarious. And we're not talking, this is not a Marvel podcast. That's in the works.
It's a book
elsewhere.
Podcast.
It's a book. We should do, oh my God. I need an episode of the book Look Out for the Little Guy by Scott Lang. We're gonna review the book. Oh Marvel, if you're listening, send us copies, please. That'd be amazing.
And why not sponsor us?
Oh my God, sponsor us. Oh my God.
Like, come on, we got day jobs that we hate. Let's go. We want to like just do this 100%.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Like literally.
I mean, I don't really hate my day job. I like my day job.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, sucks to be y'all. Can't relate. Can't relate. It's like I get paid a decent wage, and the people that I work with are very, all the people that I help, are great. So
customer service sucks. Everything else that deals with people outside of your own comfort, your own home sucks. I want to do stuff like this the rest of my life. This would be fun. Making movies or YouTube or whatever. something a little more on the creative end. So one day I will get that dream.
I just want to
One
read
day.
books. I just want to sit at home, read books, and then just talk about it, and go to sleep, rinse and repeat.
Period. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the Book Watchers. We're back again. Even though I'm acting like we haven't recorded in forever, but yet I haven't started posting anything about this podcast since fucking God. When was the last time I posted an episode of this podcast? Because this thing has been on hold until we get enough episodes. Because I am a stickler. Last episode we posted on this was January 2023. But of course, we're in the midst of pre-recording. So if you're listening to this now, hey, congratulations! We have gotten enough episodes to start posting again, so we can get ahead of the curve. Anywhoosies. So yeah. So today's episode, we finished Jurassic Park franchise. That was the last episode we did. Now we are going to be jumping over to the Ookie Spooky side of things. Today we're going to be talking about, with our guest Tiff, we're going to be talking about the Hellbound Heart by a fellow gay, Clive Barker.
Yes.
Our fellow British gay. And we're going to be in the realm of horror for quite a while, for a little while, So that's going to be fun. So, Clive Barker. Where do I begin with that man? Where do I begin? I had stuff up, but let me just production stuff. So, The Hellbound Heart is a horror novella created by Clive Barker. Clive Barker is an English novelist, playwright, author, film director, visual artist, whose prominence was started coming about in the mid 80s with a series of short stories known as the Books of Blood. He's a horror. He's done a lot of horror stories and stuff. Hellraiser is from the Hellbound Heart. He's done stuff like, there's a British horror film called Underworld that he's writing for. He also directs movies. Nightbreed is his creation, if you've ever seen that. That's based on his novella, The Cabal. There's a bunch of things. There's also an executive producer on the Candyman movie, the original one. So he's been around in the world of horror and ooky spooky shit. But today we're talking about the Hellbound Heart that was released back in November 1986. It is considered a horror gothic horror fiction. Yes. This is his third this novella is placed in the third volume of his Night Visions anthology series. And so yeah, the novella was released in 1986, but then was re-released as a standalone title because originally it was part of the anthology series, and then it was released by itself in 1991 as a little book. And the book is fairly small, by the way, as well, if you're wondering if you want to go check out and read it yourself. This is the story that has Pinhead and the Cenobites that we know from the movies. But the Cenobites, I have a whole conversation I want to do about the Cenobites, but I'm going to save that for when we talk about the Hellraiser films, the film series as a whole, on how they on how Clive Barker takes the Cenobites and brings them to the big screen with the first film, and how he adapts his own story. Because if you didn't know, he also directed the first film. So this is one of those few times that the writer actually directs the film. So, who wants to start us off on the journey through the Hellbound Heart?
Tiff, I'm glad you volunteered as tribute.
Damn.
Again, this is my first time on here. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do for my books, okay?
just talk about it. Like like your biggest takeaways, just a little bit about the plot and your biggest takeaways. We're pretty like impromptu here.
Okay.
Like we're just
Okay.
vibing.
See, because like my thought process is, I was like, is this like spook? Do we tell, like, do we like, okay, so this is like the whole plot of the book, and then we
Well, I mean, yes,
kind
we
of like
do.
talk about it.
Yes,
Yeah,
we do that, but
Okay.
I take it because Jacob's usually the one that does that. I take it you were not prepared for that today.
No, I was not prepared for that
No, I'm
today.
talking about I'm talking to Jacob, not you.
Oh,
I mean, I could do it.
because I mean, I listened to the book. I didn't get a chance to like buy the book or
Mhm.
like sit down and actually read it. I listened to it,
Okay.
and the way that the audiobook is,
Mhm.
you can only take so much from it, then actually sit down and read it or reread it.
Okay. Well, I guess before we get into the plot, have our residential plot bearer go over the plot. What were your thoughts? How did you initially? What did you want to read this book, or in this case, listen to it? Did you want to get into this before we came up to you and be like, hey, you want to do the Hellbound Heart?
Yeah, it was on my to read list. I have like 30 more books that was ahead of it because I was reading a whole series. So it was on that, like, I'm going to read it eventually. Um I don't really consume horror novels all that much. I'm more of like a fantasy and or gosh, what is it? Like uh I wouldn't say post-apocalyptic, but
Mm-hmm.
like Hunger Games was a series that I really enjoyed. There's one called Matched, 1985, like those kind of books, to where, like, like government controls everything, and
Yeah.
there's like ways or Divergent, like those kind of books.
Mm-hmm.
Those are ones that I lean a lot towards, or like extreme, like high fantasy, like the Dritz books is ones that I've been like constantly reading on.
Mm-hmm.
Or I was leaning towards the Magic the Gathering books as well, things like that. So
Okay.
I mean, I have read Stephen King, which I think is like the only few horror books that I have read were from Stephen King himself. So it was I'm trying to think of a word. It was something that I'm not uncomfortable with. It's just I wanted to read it, like actually sit down and read a physical copy of it. Hearing someone read a book to me, especially on certain parts, made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Because when I don't know this dude who's reading to me, so I was like, I'm gonna pause it. I gotta step away. And it's not like the parts that were raunchy were raunch. I read very very adult books as well. So it's not like, oh, him pulling out his penis and stroking himself while he's getting torn apart was uncomfortable for me. It was just like a stranger was reading in my ears.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't want to hear you tell me about this. Please stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a different scenario because I actually, well, I kind of read this book. I read along because with my dyslexia, reading that I've addressed before in this podcast, reading is a pain in the ass for me sometimes. I luckily have a boyfriend who we FaceTime every night, and we sometimes like to read books together. Well, he'll read to me, and that was one of the books that he read to me. So we read The Ring together like that, and then he's like, "Hey, you want to do Hellbound Heart?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" I've never read the thing that inspired the Hellraiser film. And of course, with a new one that came out not too long before, I was like, fuck yeah, let's read it. And then that's how I got to read it, and it was great.
Well, again, because like you had someone that you
Yeah.
trust enough and that you're comfortable with.
And like I said, we kind of have the same situation, but at the same time, you have a stranger read it to you. Well, I had somebody that I'm like dating, someone that I know to read it to me. So same, but different.
Same, but different. Yeah, but I mean, the overall take of it, like it was I enjoyed it. I'm trying to like think of like words and like they're not coming to me. It's like I really enjoyed the book. The way that it was paced, it was a short read, like I'm pretty sure that I could have finished it in one day. But I didn't. Whenever I go work out, I like to listen to audiobooks a lot. So like at the beginning I listen to some music because it keeps the pace going, and then once I get into like weightlifting and I'm not having to like force myself to run longer than what I'm comfortable with, I just sit there and I listen to my books while I'm doing my reps. So I think I finished it in about a week or so, because
Mhm.
45 minutes to an hour and a half is like my workout time usually.
Yeah.
So, and like the last, like, let's say like 30 minutes of the book, like it was either I was in my car sitting in my driveway listening to it, or taking the post workout shower. And I loved the slow decline of, gosh, I can't remember her name. Ugh, I can't remember her name. What was her name?
Let's see. It was.
I'm opening up my book app now because I do have it on my book app.
I have a book. I have the book right here. Let's see. Julia.
Was it Julia?
Yeah.
Fucking, I hate Julia. Fuck that
She's
bitch.
she is such a fucking slut.
We
Like
don't slut shame here on this
We
podcast,
don't slut shame
slut.
here.
but she's just trash.
She is fucking trashy as all hell. Like,
Okay, well,
ooh.
why? Why? I want to know why you think Julia's slutty for a second. Because, like, from my
She
take,
slept with her fucking brother-in-law before she even got married to his brother.
That's just a cheater. That's just trash. Not
that's
not
just
trash as in sexual, trash as in just a trash person.
okay. Yeah, that's just a trash person. But like, I
Still,
got
it's
I got that part of it, but from what I could tell is that she wasn't really happy in her marriage, and that she did
No.
have a connection with what's his tits, and
Frank.
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 Yeah, Frank. Like she wanted, she like, but I words, what are they today? I feel like she felt like it was too late for her, that she was already getting married to Frank's brother. So, and the whole conversation between her and Frank whenever he was coming back, like it felt a little manipulative, but at the same time, like he could have been meaning what he said whenever he's just like, if I had you, if you were married to me instead of my brother, like I would have had a reason to live. Like I wouldn't have searched out what
Okay,
what was basically my demise.
okay, so I'll take
It
back
seemed
the
manipulative, I was just like, but at the
so
same time, I'm like, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he felt that way.
well. Here's the thing. I'm gonna take back what I said about Julia being a slut. She's just trashy. All right. She could have, if she wasn't happy, like even before she got married to Rory, Frank's brother.
Yeah.
She could have just left. She could have just left him either way, but she stuck it out, and now she's in a marriage that she feels trapped in, and like it's just one of those things. Like it could, if she wasn't happy, she should have just left, but
I feel
instead
bad for
she's
her husband, to be honest.
yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
Rory is
so
a good
bad for
guy.
him.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and he didn't deserve what happens to him in the end, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But yeah, it was just really shitty. And then the real slut in this whole book is Frank, because that dude Frank is a
Frank is
man
a
whore.
hoe.
He
He
is
He's
is
a
a
a
hoe.
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 He is a hoe. All
He's
right,
living
like
his hoe era.
his hoe era. It's his whole lifestyle shit. It's not. It's
Dude, that's
not a
literally why
phase,
he got
mom.
into he literally got into that position because he's a hoe. Like he's just all like, no woman is able to pleasure me. I need like pleasure coming from the gods,
This
basically.
It's like,
yes.
sweetie, chill. Put
Yeah,
a
so this is a perfect segue. This is a perfect segue. Let's to the plot of the story.
yeah,
So, literally, the very first chapter of this book is of Frank trying to solve the puzzle of the what do they call it? The is it the Lamarcand's box? All
yeah.
right. So he's literally trying to solve the puzzle, right? And he does. He opens it and summons up the Cenobites. Now the description. No, I don't know. Like I must have misread it because when the Cenobites popped up, like they weren't exactly what I expected them to be. Let me see. There was like four Cenobites that popped up. Let's see. Here, let me just like look at the description.
Hmm.
Let's see. It's clothes, some of which were sewn to and through its skin, head. It's nothing. I think the like Pinhead was the one that talked to him. It's like, what is your desire? And like he was so shocked. He was so shocked that he couldn't really respond. But like,
I found the description of the one he was talking to.
yeah.
So it says like its clothes, some of which were sewn to and through its skin, hid its private parts. There was nothing in the dregs of its voice or in its willfully disfigured features that offered the least clue. When it spoke, the hooks that transfixed the flaps of its eyes were wed, and by intricate system of chains passed through the flesh and bone like to similar hooks through the lower lip, were teased by the motion, exposing the glistening meat beneath. That was the
Okay,
first one to
so
talk to him.
yeah, isn't that we do see that one in the movie though? It's but it doesn't even talk. It's just like chitters its teeth.
Oh, does it? I
Yeah,
I wanted to go back and watch the
Well,
first
it's
one again.
you talking about the original or the remake?
the original.
The original.
Well, in the
Uh,
original, yeah, we do see it,
let
and we
me
do
see.
technically see it in the remake. That's the one where it just constantly just chitters its teeth.
There's
But
because there's some of the Cenobites that they mentioned that don't even appear in any of the movies, like the what was it, the engineer is what they call her.
The engineer I think is like the leader of the Cenobites.
Yeah, but that one
oh,
doesn't appear in the movies. Like some of them don't appear at
No,
all.
yeah,
And the Hell
okay,
Priest is only shown maybe once or twice throughout the book, like twice at least.
like
And it's
they,
just
yeah, they do describe Pinhead. They do describe the Pinhead.
yeah. It's literally the one. It's the second one that talks. Like
Mm,
it's like,
yeah.
do you understand? The figure beside the first speaker demanded. Its voice, unlike that of its companion, was light and breathy, the voice of an excited girl. Every inch of its head had been tattooed with an intricate grid, and at every intersection of horizontal and vertical axis, a jeweled pin driven through to the bone. Its tongue was similarly decorated. Do you even know who we are? It asks. So like that's Pinhead right there. So the thing about the remake of Hellraiser is that that was the most faithful description of Pinhead, because like
mm,
here Pinhead is described as feminine, but in the
mm.
original movie it was portrayed as a more masculine figure.
which we'll get into in the movie when we talk about for the next episode when we talk about the movies because I have some context for that why they did what they did due
Right.
to a lovely mega fan I know.
Right. So anyway, to like get on with the plot, like this is like he interacts with the after he solves the Lemercan box. As he's like getting close to solving the puzzle and opening the box, he begins hearing ringing of bells, like kind of like church bells, And then when he finally solves it, everything goes silent. The lights in the room he's in goes off, and then finally like a light appears, and that's where the Cenobites are. And we see, I believe there was 4 Cenobites, and there were supposed to be 5, but it said one of them tells him that the 5th one hasn't appeared yet because it's supposed to be the engineer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and they offer him. They do offer him like untold ecstasies, like because that's the whole reason why Frank got the damn box in the first place, was so that way he can experience new levels of basically just sexual pleasure. All right, we're not talking about drugs. We're not talking about like alcohol or like anything else. It's just pure sexual desire. That's what drove him to get to like solve this box. And he gets it, and he gets even more than what he asked for. And that's the scene that Tiff was describing earlier with the whole like, he's basically experiencing like the most like excruciating pains, but yet somehow he finds pleasure in it and just ends up masturbating through the whole thing. And I'm gonna be honest, like I made the mistake of bringing this book with me to work, because when I'm at work, there's times where it's just dead, so I'm reading it. And when I got to that scene, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna put this down. I just realized this is not safe for me to have out here. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Like no, like please nobody, like I'm just so glad mind reading doesn't exist, because if people were reading my mind like as I was reading it, I'm just like, oh god, no.
Where were you reading it?
Well, like okay, so we set up at events outside of like stores and gas stations, right? And like the book cover isn't conspicuous, right? It's just a dark book cover. It's not flashy, and like the words are pretty small, so no one can like see what I'm reading. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh no, I'm putting this away. I can't read this here. I didn't expect it to be that graphic. So I realized my mistake, and I put the book away for the rest of the day and did not touch it until I got home. But I was like, oh no, what am I doing?
I
What the
can't
fuck?
can't relate. I read like raunchy fan fiction out in public, and if you read what's on my screen, that's your fault. Like,
That's
Okay,
on you,
so
boo
okay.
boo.
like
It's you
stop
and
being
God.
nosy. Like,
I've read other books that have pretty like erotic like pretty erotic scenes, and I'll just read it without any shame, right? But just reading this book and that scene here, the mutilation and the freaking just the self pleasure from the middle mutilation was like, oh god, no, this is like, oh why, oh god. I was just like, no, no, I can't keep a straight face while reading this. Like people would like walk by me, and they would just see the look of just like disgust on my face as I'm reading that scene. I'm just like,
not gonna lie, I made that kind of face at the gym today while listening to the book, because
I was
like,
just like,
and it was like
yeah.
literally right after like my last set for that exercise, and I was gonna go on to something else, and you just hear "come to daddy," and I was like, "Ugh!" Like
I know. I was like
Just
that
like,
too.
I was like, "Ugh!" And like I made eye contact with the dude who was next to me, and I would just had this like this ill face, and I was like, "Ooh, my bad."
No,
Let's see here.
funny thing. When that scene came up, my boyfriend was reading it to me. And he's like, "Come to daddy," and I'm like, "Babe, oh my god."
Let's see. Let me see here. I'm just gonna like. Let's see. He basically begs them to like to show him like the just the pleasure that they offer, right?
Yeah.
And then they do, and he just starts like basically all of his senses get dialed up to 1,000,000. So he feels everything around him. He experiences everything like extreme to the like the most extremes, and it's just pain. And let me see. Let's see. Like, here. I'm not gonna read it. I'm not gonna read a passage out of this, but I'm gonna see. Oh my god, like flooding his system from each nerve ending and taste bud, like fresh sensations flooding his system. His ears were no less sensitive, and then like, Yeah, I
Ugh.
I was just like, just ugh. So yeah, moving on. Yeah, he basically just like it ends with how you expect, and like in the end, the Xenobites just deuce out, and he's launder, and like only one of them's left, and I think it was the Pinhead one, and like I think she's the one that takes him back to their reality, and he's basically trapped in this other reality where the Xenobites dwell.
Yeah.
And so basically they continue to give him the pleasure that he was looking for, but it's just torture 24/7, right?
Pain
It's
and torture, pain and pleasure are one and the same.
yeah, that's what the Xenobites believe,
Yeah.
and that's why they call themselves explorers to the most like deepest regions of pain or like of pleasure, right? And just ugh. Yeah, chapter 1 is not safe to read. Like it's a very disturbing uh chapter, so just be warned. And so moving on from that, that's when we're introduced to Frank's brother and sister-in-law. His brother's name is Rory, his sister-in-law is Julia. And as we've already said, we think very little of Julia. She's just a very overall trashy person. I mean, there you could find you can sympathize with her because like some people just find themselves in those situations and it's out of their control. But for me, like I just don't have a great opinion of her. She seems to me like very high maintenance.
I
And
mean,
Rory,
with what she does later on in the book, what she becomes as a character is just like, yeah, if she wasn't a fucking shit person before, she is by the end of the book.
oh yeah, 100%. And so like it talks so like the next few chapters are just about them getting situated into their new house. So Rory and Frank, after their parents died, they inherited their house and basically shared ownership of their parents' house. Uh, and but the thing is, it's been empty for years. Occasionally, Frank will show up and use it as like a trap house for his little sexual escapades. And in fact, this is where Frank was when he summoned the Xenobites.
Mm-hmm.
So they move in, and uh, so Frank and Rory they move in. I'm sorry, Rory and Julia they move in, and she's not exactly happy that they moved there, but at the same time, like she's giving it a shot because like Rory thinks that moving into this house would be exactly what they need to like spice up their relationship, do something different, what have you, and they also meet another character who basically becomes she's basically this little lovesick local girl. Her name is Kirsty. Um, in the book, she's a neighbor, but in the movie, she's actually their she's Rory's daughter.
Yeah.
And
We'll
Kirsty,
get into that.
yeah, we'll get into that, but
The
she's just a
movie.
neighbor. Yeah, she in the book she's a neighbor, and she has a huge crush on Rory, and she's she thinks that he could do so much better than Julia, uh, even though she's envious of Julia's looks because Julia is what she would call a natural beauty. She doesn't really have to put much effort into looking good, while Kirsty is just kind of plain looking. But that's not important. Uh, so she tries to be friends with Julia, mainly just because she wants to get closer to Rory, and Julia is just more closed off about it. Um, but throughout the book, for the next like couple chapters, Julia becomes fascinated and enamored with this one room in the house. It's actually the master bedroom, but because of how like when they find it, it's pretty damp. It's old, dirty, and musty, and even though Rory says that they can fix it up, Julia convinces him not to because it's too damp and she doesn't really want to make that into their personal bedroom. So they set up shop somewhere else. and she like makes it her personal project to slowly clean up the room. At one point, though, Rory tries to help her clean up the room, and he accidentally cuts himself on a rusty nail in the on one of the support pillars in the room, and his blood gets all over the place. And let me tell you something. Rory is an upstanding guy. He's really cool. Doesn't deserve what happens to him, but he's a bit of a bitch when it comes to blood. Dude almost like passes out at the sight of his own blood, and uh, so she ends up taking him to the hospital to get stitches. But when she comes back and she comes into the room, who does she find? But the just desiccated corpse of Frank. And
Fun.
yeah, so Frank basically, even though he was trapped he was trapped in the other plane of existence with the Cenobites, because his brother's blood got spilled in that room, it gave him enough energy to escape. But when he escaped, he was just this like pile of meat and bones, all disgusting and ugly. Ugh. It's just one that was like one of the other scenes in this book that made me go ugh, like visibly. I made a face when at this scene, because like when he reveals himself to Julia, she freaks out and he tells her, "No, wait, baby, it's me, Frank." The guy your husband's brother who you slept with before you actually married your my brother.
Wow.
And yeah, so he convinces her to help him. So he tells her that he needs more blood, because his brother's blood was what made him strong enough to escape the Cenobites, and he's going to need a lot more blood if he's going to be able to like fully recover and escape the influence of the Cenobites. So, and this is the part that like got to me about Julia, because even though she was disgusted and horrified by the fact that her brother-in-law slash lover uh, is now this horrid creature, like she actually helps him without much resistance. She's just like, oh well, I guess I want to help him. And how does she help him? By luring men into this house, drawing them up into that room, and then she would kill them. And when their blood is spilled in the room, Frank will absorb the blood and he slowly reconstitutes himself. So she does this to like, I think she kills what, like 3 or 4 men? But
Yeah.
yeah, so she would do this by like whenever Rory's at work, she would go out to like a bar, meet a guy, convince him to go back to the house, and once they're in the room, like the first time she killed somebody, it was like really she killed a guy. It was really messy, and like she got blood. There was blood everywhere, and I think the dude almost escaped the house, and then Frank showed up and like just murdered the shit out of the guy, and like, and then she rinsed and repeat with like 3 other guys, and I think the very very last man that she ends up killing was Rory himself,
Mm-hmm.
which is sad. But before that happens, uh, Kirsty she was coming. The thing about Kirsty is that she was becoming a bit obsessed with Julia and Rory. Like she was very infatuated with him, and she was always trying to like really like get closer to Julia and Rory by extension. And at one point, when she was stopping by their house for a visit, she sees Julia taking one of the men into the house, and she was really shocked and realizing, because like she assumed that that Julia was having an affair, which kind of, if you think about it, but it's not important. So Kirsty ends up sneaking into the house, and she stumbles upon the crime scene. Like they just killed a man, and uh, she barely manages to escape, and when she escapes, she actually she snatches and steals the Lemercan box. And Frank freaks out, and he's like, "Nope, don't do anything with that. If you do, it'll like he just gets he gets really freaked out. She does manage to escape. Like the way she manages to escape from Frank. When she grabbed the box, he was coming at her, but he stopped when she had it, and he tells her like, "Put it down. It's not safe. Right? Give me the box." And she's like, "Oh, you want this?" Yeet! She yeets the fucking box out the window, and he freaks out. And then that momentary distraction was enough for her to escape the house. And she does escape. Thing is, she does get hurt in her escape, and she ends up in the hospital. And when the thing is, when the paramedics found her, she was clutching the Lamercan box with a death grip, and they couldn't pry it out of her hands. So when she becomes coherent, she wakes up in the hospital. The doctors ask her a few questions, and she plays dumb. She acts like she doesn't remember who she is to avoid revealing like what she saw and risking Julia and by extension Frank figuring out where she is. So when the doctors leave her alone for a minute, she starts studying the box, and like a moron, she opens it. She like figures out the puzzle and opens it and summons the Xenobites. And when you open the Lemercan's box, you either accept the Cenobites' offer of pleasure, or they'll just simply just take your ass uh, to their reality and give it to you anyway. So yeah, this happens. The Cenobites all appear in her hospital room. She freaks out. They try to offer her their pleasure. She refuses, and they're like, "All right, well, you summoned us, and we're taking you anyway." And she's like, "No, no, don't! I know where Frank is." And they're like, "Yeah, right. We know where Frank is too, and he's currently experiencing the pleasures he asked us for." And she's like, "No, Frank is not. He's not in his prison. He escaped." And the Xenobites are like, "If this is true, you need to provide proof." She's like, "I can get the proof for you. Just let me go get it." And they're like, "All right, well, we'll give you 24 hours, and if you don't find him within that time period, we're taking your ass." So they let her go, and she ends up sneaking out of the hospital and going back to the house. When she gets there, she's greeted by Rory and Julia, who are both acting like nothing's wrong. And she confronts them, and she tells Rory everything about how Frank is like this desiccated corpse upstairs, and Julia has been helping him by killing people. But Rory just brushes it off, and he's like, "Yeah, oh yeah, I know all about that, and it's been handled. Frank is dead." And
Oh
Julia's
man.
and Kirsty's like, "Oh shit." Like, no, oh my god, I needed him. And Rory even shows her the dead body, and she sees the body, and like it's convincing, but she starts noticing something's off
No,
about what's up.
I knew exactly whenever she walked in and that was happening.
Oh
I was like,
yeah,
dude, I was like, they did it because oh gosh, he's like, well, I still need skin.
yeah,
I still need skin, so I can't walk around like this. And she's like, well, what do you suggest? And I was like, oh no, oh no. I
yep.
was like, don't do
So
it.
yeah, so thing is that when she does see Rory, she notices that he's pretty much covered in blood, and she tells her that's when she confronts them both on like Frank, and he tells her like, "Yeah, he's upstairs, he's dead. I killed him." And she sees the body, and she's like, it's convincing, but when she looks at Rory and the way uh, he's acting like really weird, and I forgot what he said. I think he goes, I think he like says, "Come to daddy," right?
He does. He does. He
Yeah,
says,
he
come
says,
to
"Come to
daddy.
daddy, come to daddy," and that's when she's like, "Ooh!" And that's when she realized it was actually Frank. Frank wasn't dead. He killed Rory and skinned him, and now is wearing Rory's skin. And I was just like, when I read that, I was like, no, no, not my boy Rory. Ah, these bastards. So now Kirsty has to like is now in deep shit because Frank is gonna kill her again. And the thing is that when he's about to kill her, and that's when she realizes that that's Frank, and she basically like Kirsty's running out of time. The Cenobites are slowly starting to close in on her. She can hear the bells, and she can feel like it's like for her, it's like there's chains constricting her throat, and she knows she's about to get taken by them. So she reaches out and she grabs him. And let me see here. What does she do? Oh yeah, so she
She
reaches out.
she she like rips the face off of him.
Yeah, she rips the face off of him, revealing like his real face, and like the bells that she was hearing, like she was only hearing them in her head, so no one else could hear him. But then, like when she rips off his the skin on his face, the bells stop ringing in her ear, and now she can actually hear him in the house around her. And it's like, oh, and that is when the Cenobites appear because that's when the Cenobites appear because the chain that she felt around her neck is relaxed and completely gone. She does have to like she does have to like run from Frank because he's still the Cenobites don't exactly close in on him right away. Uh, he does attack her and she has to avoid
She
him.
she feels like they're just playing with him. Like the
Yeah.
Cenobites are just playing with him.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they didn't come for him right then and there is because they probably couldn't. They wanted him to like, they just wanted her to like, they yeah, like you said, they were playing with them, but it wasn't until she lures him back into that room, it's the
Hmm.
master bedroom, that they reappear. Let's see here. Let me double check. Let me double check. I have my book right here. Uh-huh. Fireworks still exploding, the bell's still ringing. She started to mount the stairs, blah blah blah. The stairs, second floor. Oh yeah, and Frank kills Julia. He ends up sucking the life out of her, full on mummy style. She's like, even though Julia like was trying to help out, was trying to help him by stopping Kirsty. Kirsty uh, like Frank was gonna stab Kirsty with a knife, and Julie was gonna hold her down, but Kirsty like sidesteps her, and Frank ends up stabbing Julia instead. And he doesn't really care. He just ends up sucking the life out of her and continues his little game of cat and mouse with Kirsty. And let me see. Yep, cat and mouse. Blah blah blah. Da, da, da. Where is the siege? She has a little bit. Sorry, I'm just. Yep. Yep. She lures him back into the main room.
So she hides in that like extra bedroom that they kind of use as a storage room for a
Yeah,
little
but when
bit, and she discovers the dead body of one of the men.
yeah, it was like just like horribly stuffed into one of the trunks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but when she thinks that he like that Frank is like no longer like in this like in that area of the house, she slips out and tries to go back down the stairs to get out of there, but Rory ends up like popping out of one of the other rooms and is like, "There you are, come to daddy."
Yeah, because she started hiccuping.
Yeah, he finds her. Anyway, so she ends up getting cornered in the master bedroom, And also, like, this is another reason why the Cenobites didn't exactly go for Frank right off the bat. It's because they wanted to hear him say it's him, Frank. So when she got cornered in the master bedroom, that's where Rory's corpse is. And when she accidentally trips over the corpse, and she looks at it and she says, "Oh, Rory," like, and Frank is all like, "That's right, Rory." And she's all like, "Rory's dead," and he's like, "Hush, baby, you're not Rory." We know that, but nobody else does. Who are you then? Poor baby, losing your mind, are you? Good thing too. Who though? It's safer that way. Who? Hush, baby. Oh my god. Like, this dude was just gross. Yeah, eventually he does say, "Yes, Frank's here, baby." Frank? That's right. I'm Frank. And that's exactly what the Cenobites were waiting for. Because uh a second after he says that, the bells start ringing again, and the light bulb in the room flickers to life, and there she sees
Dun dun dun.
dun dun dun, let me see. He hears a voice.
He in trouble now.
Yep, he hears a voice. It said his name lightly, as if calling a child out to play. Frank. And his face dropped for a second time that night, and a look of puzzlement flitted across it, and on its heel, horror. Slowly, he turned his head round to look at the speaker. It was the Cenobite, its hooks sparkling. Behind it, Kirsty saw three other figures, their anatomies catalogs of disfigurement. And Frank looks at Kirsty and he's like, "You did this." At this point, the Cenobites tell her to get lost. This is it's no longer her problem now, and Frank tries to attack her, but he gets caught by a bunch of hooks and chains from the Cenobites. She ends up fleeing the room, and let me see here.
She looks back.
She looks back, and as she closes the room, as she closes the door, she begins to hear him scream, and like, I believe there's a point where she just sees him get completely ripped apart.
Yeah.
And as she's fleeing from the house, it's starting to, like, basically, like, destroy itself. Like, let me see here. Yep, she sees him get torn apart, and she's daggering downstairs. The bells are tolling everywhere. She reached the bottom again in the hallway of the front door, but as she came within spitting distance of freedom, she heard somebody call her name. It was Julia. There was blood on the floor, marking a trail from the spot where Frank had abandoned her. And let's see here. I believe one of the Xenobites was like puppeting her Julia's body.
Yeah, it was the main one, the head, the creator or whatever.
The engineer?
Yeah, the engineer.
Yeah, the engineer. Yeah. So it was puppeting her, and I think it wanted to, like, even though the Cenobites promised to let Kirsty go, I think one of them was going to try to, like, trap her anyway. Um, Either way, the the last thing Kirsty hears out of Julia's mouth is, I am the engineer." Uh, she did not wait to see what else happens, because, like, Julia looked like she had her wedding dress on, but she was all grotesque and just broken looking and just ugly. And Kirsty, she instead runs out of the house, and um, she breathes in the fresh air. She looks back at the house. She, like, runs down the street, and, like, when she comes to the end of it, she looks back at the house, but it doesn't look any different. It's like, even though there was all this crazy shit going on the inside, the outside looked completely normal. And when she turns to keep going, she ends up running into a pedestrian. But it turns out this pedestrian was actually another puppet of the Cenobites, because when this pedestrian bumps into her, he ends up dropping the Lemerkin box in her hands. And so yeah, so she still has it. And let me see, what does she do with it? So it basically ends with her just, she ends up keeping the Lemerkin box, and she basically safeguards it to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. And if it does, I guess like she wants to like make sure that nothing comes out of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's pretty much where the book ends. It was pretty gruesome, and like, yeah. So I know like there there are other, like, plenty of other better ways to describe the plot of the book, and there's some other information that was left out, mainly because some of it was too gruesome or too perverted to actually share in this episode.
Mhm.
This is a
So,
very adult themed book. Very, like, kids should not be reading this.
no, it really, and the movies really don't do it justice,
It really doesn't.
because, well, I mean, honestly, American, like Hollywood, any like movie studio, they're not going to produce a movie this gruesome. Though I think they have before.
They have.
Yeah, well, this was, I think the first one came out in the 80s, but I think it's just like
The
the
first
fact.
movie?
Yeah, didn't it come out in like the 80s, or was it
The
the
first
90s?
Hellraiser? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the 80s.
Yeah, it was 87, literally a year after the book was published.
yeah. So I don't know. They've produced really fucked up movies, but yeah, I think like none of them had. Well, wait, did they have this much? Did those other movies have this much like erotic, like body horror?
I mean, grindhouse films. That genre of like
Oh,
exploitive horror was all kinds of like stuff similar to this that was like grotesque for the time. So I mean
yeah.
I mean I would say Hellraiser or the Hellbound Heart's not so like, it's not as out, I wouldn't say it's out of pocket.
I don't know, man. Like with Hellraiser, like I there's literally been movies that have been worse when it comes to body horror. I can list one franchise in particular, which is the Saw movies,
Oh
because
yeah.
there's so much body horror in it that, like, I've only watched the first one all the way through. I refuse to watch all the other ones just because I walked in once with my family watching it, and the dude's arms, or somebody's arms, were like in this contraption, and the arms were like turning slowly, and you just saw
Oh, I know
saw
which
the
one you're talking about.
skin rip and then the muscles rip,
Yeah.
and I was like, ugh! Like, I couldn't, like, this was like, I was probably no more than like 12 years old, and I could not handle it, and I realized real quickly body horror is not really a thing for me. So, like, if they
It
could make movies like that, like the Saw movies, then they could have done the same thing with Hellraiser, to be honest, because
yeah,
Hellraiser I don't think is as extreme
It's just the
as the
sexual
Saw
nature
movie.
of it that's the
Yeah, the
extreme
sexual
part.
nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think any of those other body horror movies really like incorporate that sexuality into it, the eroticism. Uh, yeah. Um, ugh, oof. It's like that's an image. I have like a very visual. I'm a very visual thinker, so I can imagine almost perfectly how a scene is portrayed just by reading the book, and just that scene of the pain of just the grotesque experience and eroticism that's described in this book. I could picture it, and I'm just like, oh, that's not an image I'm gonna get out of my head anytime soon. So,
I
but yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like I know you said like one like production company in particular would be like fine for doing this, but like in recent events watching a few A24 films, like I
And I was
feel
about to say A24 would be perfect for
A24,
this.
100%, fucking watching men just kind of sealed the deal for me with that, because I'm like, that was body horror. I was like, oh god, like
Ugh.
that movie will make you uncomfortable. So like,
Uncomfortable.
yeah, it makes you extremely uncomfortable. And I was like, and I'm pretty sure that that's what they were going for. But I'm pretty sure that they could probably make this book into like the movie that people who have read it wants to see.
Hmm.
That being said, though, that remake,
Oh, that was a great remake.
yeah, that remake was good.
I really like how they made it to where like every time you solve like each configuration of Lemurcan's box, it transforms into another configuration, and you have to like solve it again. And then it also involves a sacrifice.
I
And when you
mean, they talk about that in the book though, because in the first chapter, whenever Frank was like solving it, they do say how Frank had lured other people to solve this box.
yeah,
And like how many times he's had people solve this box to get to the one that he wanted, because the one that he wanted was the one where the Cenobites would come out and ask them like, what do you want from us? So
Yeah.
he had people solving this box for a while until he got the Cenobites.
Yeah. Fair. So everyone liked the book? What was your thoughts on, like, did you like, this was lit? This was everything I wanted in a Hellraiser book. I mean, because it was pretty much kind of like the first movie, pretty much. So outside of like a few things that differed, but we'll get into that when we get into the movie. But overall, I mean, I like the book. It was.
I like the book.
It's
I liked
gay. It's so. Not. I wouldn't say gay. Well, kind of gay. Kind of. The little gayness is in there. It's in there. Very sexual. Which, I mean, Clive, are you okay? Mr. Barker, are you all right?
like, sir, who hurt you?
He was gay in the 80s. I mean,
yeah, I was literally about to say that.
He was gay in the 80s. I think a lot of things hurt him.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's like you could only succeed as a gay man if you were in Hollywood.
And he wasn't even in Hollywood.
I know. I mean, I know, it's true.
So
Either way.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this episode talking about the Hellbound Heart as a book?
I loved it. I thought it was great.
I want to read the Scarlet Gospels, which is like,
yeah, I want to read
sequel,
more of his work now.
But there's also something else you have to read before you read the Scarlet Gospels, and it's another book of Clive Barker's work that introduces another character, because the Scarlet Gospels is like the Hellbound Heart and another book, because characters from both of those are in that book. So I have some reading to do. So,
same here.
But yeah, if not, y'all guys have any more final thoughts. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Hellbound Heart. Catch us next week as we will talk about the Hellraiser franchise films. Mostly talking about the first and the newest one. Mostly. Because honestly, 2 is okay. 3 is okay. And then after that, it just gets kind of bonkers. Until the last one.
So there's the Hellbound Heart, there's the Scarlet Gospels, and there's Hellraiser the Toll. Those are the 3 in the Hellraiser series.
Yes, but for the Scarlet Gospels, you need to read one other book that introduces another character, because it's like it'll be Pinhead versus another character from a totally different book that he wrote too. So I don't know. I have to ask my boyfriend the reading order of stuff, because he knows the reading order of all this, and he gave me a whole spiel, and I'm like, oh, I remember that. I don't remember that, so I'm gonna need to find out. I'm gonna need to find out, because I was paying attention, and then poof, gone. So, but yeah. So thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Catch us next time as talk about the movies. Until then, bye.
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 Pain and pleasure, the same thing. I don't like pain. I don't do that.
Oh my god, the audiobook was narrated by Tom Holland.
What?
No, it wasn't. Tom
Ooh.
Holland as
yes,
in...
it was. I'm reading it right now. It says it was released in audiobook format on November 6, 2018, narrated by horror film director Tom Holland.
Oh, it's a different Tom Holland. Yeah. There's two Tom Hollands. There's the...
Okay, not the little boy Tom Holland.
No, and we're not talking about the Spider-Man Tom Holland. We're talking about the director Tom Holland.
Yeah, like Psycho 2, Child's Play. This man read to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God. I don't know how I feel about that now.
Oh no.
Yeah, bye, y'all.